Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Inside the Therapy Room. I'm your host, Sam Sellers. I'm a registered therapist, a wife and a fur mama, and I am passionate about breaking down the barriers and stigma attached to therapy. I want to begin by first honouring the traditional custodians of the land we live and work on. Today, Tanya is on Boonwurrung land, and Sam is on Gundungurra land. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and cultures of our First Nations people. We must always remember that the land below our feet is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today we are chatting to Tanya Short, who is a master's degree qualified and registered dramatherapist. She undertook her training in England in 2010 and then worked for the UK's National Health Service for 10 years, primarily in child and adolescent mental health. Upon returning to Australia 3 years ago, she was the clinical lead for Victoria for Canteen, a youth charity organisation supporting adolescents and young adults impacted by cancer. In 2023, she decided to branch out into private practice and founded ShortStories Therapy, offering drama therapy to people of all ages on the Mornington Peninsula. Tanya strongly believes in the impact that creative arts therapy can have for so many people and is committed to raising the profile of drama therapy here in Australia. Today's episode is all about the interesting work of drama therapy. We hope you enjoy joining us inside the therapy room. Welcome, Tanya. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are here to chat all about something that I'm sure people are going to go, what on earth is that? And I'm sure even the therapists out there are probably going to go, what is that? Which is drama therapy. So before we get into what drew you to this particular modality, tell us all a little bit about what is drama therapy.
Well, you're right. Most people will be asking exactly what it is.
Yep.
So drama therapy is one of the 4 creative arts therapies that falls under the psychotherapy umbrella. So we have the same psychological training that a lot of psychologists or psychotherapists would have. However, we take the premise that art, and particularly drama, is really healing. So it's the intentional use of drama and theatre techniques to facilitate improved mental health and bring about change.
Okay. Now, when you say the 4, what are the 4?
Yes, so I trained in the UK, where they're much more established, and the creative arts therapies there is drama therapy, dance and movement therapy, art therapy, and music therapy.
Okay. So Australia's got some catching up to do.
Australia has a lot of catching up to do.
Because I guess the
5th one, but it's, in the UK, it's sort of on its own. It's not.
What was that?
Play therapy in the UK.
Yeah.
It's kind of on its own. It's not under that umbrella of creative arts therapy.
Okay, right. Because I guess most people would know art therapy. That's, that's very common. And music therapy is sort of, particularly in hospitals and, certain demographics, it's well known. But the other 2, dance therapy and movement therapy and drama therapy, I think, Australia tends to be a bit behind the times on a lot of things. So it's no surprise that that we've got a bit of catching up to do in understanding that there is more to healing than just, traditional thought or talk-based cognitive therapies. How did you find yourself studying drama therapy? What drew you to it?
I think probably typical same old story. I had fallen into a sort of sales and marketing job, and I did drama and psychology as an undergrad, just because I was interested in both of them, but I never knew that they could be linked together. And then had a boss that I didn't get on so well with, went home, started frantically Googling, what can I do with a drama and psychology degree? And drama therapy popped up, but it was not available in Australia. It's actually they've only just done a master's program 2 years ago in Australia. So the first cohort finished last year. But I said to my then boyfriend, now husband, I think I want to move to the UK and study drama therapy. So off we went.
Why not?
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
This was in 2010.
Okay, so we are really behind the times. If we, I guess, have just had our first batch of people training in this, that's a big gap of time, I guess, to sort of catch up to that thought that creative modalities can heal.
Well, it is, because whilst arts therapies in general, all of them, are relatively new in Australia, drama therapy has been established in the UK since the 1930s.
Oh my
And
goodness.
they've had training, professional masters training, since the 1960s.
Wow. Okay. So it's very established over there.
It is, and it's fully immersed. So it's all ages, which I think this is what makes it stand out from the other arts therapies too, and especially in Australia, play therapy, because it's quite similar to play therapy, but play therapy is really just for children.
Yeah.
So because drama therapy can be used for all ages, and in the UK and America and certain parts of Europe, it is established in the National Health Service, in aged care, in schools, in hospitals, in prisons,
Yeah.
and youth offending. It's
Oh my
it's a
goodness. I guess, we probably do naturally think drama therapy, creative children. That sort of is the train of thought that most people would go down. I think even when I talk about art therapy with adults, they kind of like, isn't that just for, kids or teenagers? And so you're saying drama therapy, all ages across the board.
Yep.
Amazing. How wonderful is that?
But you're absolutely right. I started private practice a few months ago, and a lot of people say, and I mean, they've said it my whole career, but that must just be for children.
Yeah.
And I think actually I work with some adults as well, and I've worked with up to 75
Wow.
back in the UK. So there's some research. There's a wonderful drama therapist in Australia who's been sort of a pioneer for drama therapy in Australia, who works specifically with dementia and the elderly, and some great research to show that, say, for our 70 plus people in Australia who are still holding on to some unprocessed trauma from the post-war times, when they have dementia and their short-term memory starts to subside, but they kick in their longer-term memory, drama therapy with that age group can give them a chance to process trauma that they've actually never processed from 50 years ago.
I mean, that's incredible, right? Like, that's incredible. We often sort of think the traditional talk therapies are not going to work with, clientele where there is a cognitive function that might be missing or different, or to have something different, to have something there that can benefit and that can help these people is incredible. And why that's not happening more often is beyond me. But it must be exciting that it's coming to the surface more.
Oh, absolutely. When I went over to the UK in 2010, I think there was about 5 drama therapists in Australia. And I just did a symposium a couple of weeks ago, and they said that there's 80 registered. And that's a huge growth. And whilst it's still a really small profession, I think there is more of an awareness. And even if it's not specifically drama therapy, there's more of an awareness that we need something that's not just cognitive, As another drama therapist I've heard said, we're not talking heads, we just speak and talk, and we experience things. We hold trauma in our bodies. We hold it in the parts of our brain that's not controlled by our speaking and our language. So we need to be doing more bottom-up, somatic, expressive, embodied therapy.
Absolutely. And I think even just the terminology of somatic is now starting to become more prevalent in just the way that therapists work. Whereas, even I was studying, 6 years ago, I did my degree, and somatic was not a word I learned in my training. So even, in that such a short period of time, to be starting to go, hey, we are more than our brain, like is only going to be beneficial, obviously. Is this only used in an individual sense? Is there a group sense that, I'm thinking drama therapy, surely there's got to be group work here. As a former drama kid myself, surely there's got to be group work.
There is, and it's really wonderful in group settings.
Yeah.
It's really quite different. So I think that the name drama therapy can be a little misleading because it very much sounds like you have to be good at drama, that we only do role play, and that it's all about putting on a performance. And it's an individual session. We do use role play sometimes, but we also use movement and storytelling and small objects and sculpts and puppetry, and there's a million things that we could use. It's more about creating that aesthetic distance, so that people can explore things safely. With group work, you can use a lot more role play. It probably draws more connections to psychodrama and to having your story witnessed, and you can take on other people's roles and act things out. So I did a lot more group work in the UK. It's something I would love to do here, but recently set up a practice, so my studio is a bit small at the moment.
Yeah, private practice doesn't always lend well to group work, does it? I get that.
But I think it's amazing because it helps people also realize that, that they're not in things alone. It makes them feel less isolated. They can, I think, learn by observing others, and also by other people hearing their story, they can feel heard.
Yeah, I guess it sort of circles back to that saying, to be seen is to be understood. And it sort of just brings a different layer of validation that you don't get in a one-on-one situation all the time. So why does drama and this sort of creative modality work for people? Why is it so powerful?
I think because we can't always say what it is that we're feeling, and we don't always know what it is that's causing us pain or a problem. So for, say, young children, they don't yet have the emotional vocabulary to explain how they're feeling or what's going on. You could say to a 5-year-old, I don't know, why do you feel angry? I don't know, I just feel angry.
Yeah.
You speak to a teenager and they're quite resistant, and they might not have the words or want to talk to you.
Yep.
And I think when you start getting into adults and older adults, often because of something they've experienced, some level of trauma, they've lost the ability to sort of talk about what it is. So I think drama therapy and creative therapies are so powerful because we don't rely on the spoken word. We do talk, but we can tap into working with people who have dementia, who are severely traumatized, who have bipolar disorder, who are nonverbal, selective needs. We can sort of work with all these people because we use our bodies, we use creative ways, and there's so many ways that we can tap into people's experiences. It's not this session plan, agenda, homework, goal kind of cognitive type thing. I never know what my sessions will look like, and even if I think I know, it doesn't end up looking like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm also wondering, is there a factor in, particularly for adults, I'm thinking that the older you get, the more likely you are, I guess, to lose that left side of your brain, that imagination, creativity part of us that is the emotion side, and we focus so heavily on the right side, being logic, structure, thought, cognition, that it is just utilizing a different part of their brain as well. So it just is different.
100%. And, I think one of the things I hear the most is, oh, this will be really good for such and such because they like drama, or this will be really good for them because they're a bit of a drama queen. Or, it's like drama class, right?
Yeah.
I think whilst it absolutely, is wonderful for people who are already creative and expressive, it's also amazing for people who aren't. So the people that are too anxious to perform or to put on the play, speak up, or for people who, as you say, have completely lost that ability to kind of step out of themselves, and it can really foster and grow creativity, imagination.
It's almost giving them permission, isn't it, to just bring out that inner child, that inner part of you that is fun and silly, or, potentially that part of you that didn't have that when you were an actual child.
Yes. Yeah. It's really great for someone who has had some sort of traumatic upbringing to reconnect with the inner child, and often to forgive their inner child because it's been so shut away. And unfortunately, adult trauma survivors often, angry at themselves for letting what they believe they let something happen or not getting away. So really sort of fostering that forgiveness and connection is super important. And I think you also, someone who's never ever been able to trust in their voice, and they always think they're wrong, and they always think that they're they think they're worthless and not listening to, I can say, shout with your loudest voice, pretend that you are the king or the queen or the, and it's a bit silly, but actually they do it, they feel it, and that feeling, through the pretend play is real and can be internalized and then applied to life.
Absolutely. I work a lot with religious trauma, and often part of that journey is that you don't have that internal trust. You lose your voice. And so I can see how powerful it would be to sort of reclaim that story through a way that is not words. I think words just bring a structure and something to it that is just is different. And I'd imagine that it would be a really gentle approach as well. I think sometimes, for a lot of people coming in and sitting down on, a therapist's couch or chair and having to talk about things is overwhelming and is confronting and can be exhausting. Also, I'd imagine that this perhaps could be a much more gentle approach because it's not so heavy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, drama therapy is very strength-based. It's very client-led. It's really about affirming somebody and trying to build them up. So, unfortunately, over the years, I've heard lots of, you need to fix my child, or, make this go away. And I'm like, that's not the way here.
Yeah.
But yeah, my space is very, it's small, it's bright. I realize I'm sitting against a whiteboard, but that's only because my poster fell down.
That's okay.
Everything else is very bright.
Yeah.
But, so there's lots of things that people can do. I spend most of the time on the floor. And it's just, there's lots of cushions and things if you want to make dens, or, you just anything that makes people feel safe. So,
yeah. Is there particular groups of people or particular presentations where this is really effective? I mean, you've already sort of mentioned a few, but I can already imagine that it would be really great for neurodivergence. But are there particular presentations or groups of people that really benefit from this type of therapy?
I mean, I'm probably going to say all of them.
Fair. Yeah.
I mean, it is really brilliant for kids, and it's great for children, as you say, with neurodiversity, with emotional dysregulation. So I see a lot of kids, that come through the NDIS with that sort of neurodiversity and looking to regulate their emotions.
Yeah.
Also really great for people expressing anger or highly anxious.
Okay. Yep.
But that said, when I worked in the UK, I worked in a child and adolescent mental health service, and we saw everything from anxiety and grief and loss to, people coming in after suicide attempts and emerging personality disorder.
Okay.
Yeah, I really think, I know it sounds like I'm just drama therapy, but
I mean, that is kind of the goal. Yeah.
I've seen some amazing work, not just my own, but I've seen some amazing work with the elderly and then with the really young. And it's effective for everybody.
Yeah. Are there any particular issues, topics, or people that it wouldn't be helpful for?
I mean, I've never come across somebody that I've said I can't work with you or that I don't think this is going to work. And I would never work with someone if I didn't believe that there could be therapeutic change. I think that there's probably some people that it would take a longer period of time to have a benefit. But yeah, I mean, that said, I have worked quite a lot with nonverbal people, and sometimes I guess the work just looks really different.
Yeah.
And sometimes you wonder if you're being as effective or bringing about change, but then when you compare it to your sort of goals and your outcome measures, then I think you can. I'm sure that there probably are, but no one's talking too loudly about that. So
you've mentioned a few different things, I guess, role plays, things like that. But what sort of things does drama therapy encompass? What are some of the things that it's called Inside the Therapy Room? What do those sessions look like?
Great question. What day?
Big question.
Big question.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's really important to say, and I probably said it already, but is that it's not just about acting. So it's a lot of the time the session might be more about sticking in the sort of projective play. So we use a lot of objects, and that's something that I might do as an assessment tool as well, but just to sort of figure out what people can do. So you might ask them to create a sculpt of that, what their life looks like, or who's in their life, because then again you can see who they pick, different sizes, where they put them, who's connected to who, when they create fences around certain people. That actually be really powerful, just that sort of visual. Use quite a bit of sand tray. I have a lot of people that come in that have sensory sensitivities, so huge bowl, like big basket of sensory toys, which are really popular. I have a very large dollhouse, which is popular with the younger children generally. So, boys come in and say, "Why have you got baby toys?"
I don't know. After the recent Barbie movie, my inner child is just like thriving again and just like desperate to play with dolls and create scenarios in my head. And, I just think, I can see how it would be really great for adults to bring out that creativity. So, yeah,
definitely. I think, what you can do as well is, because the first few sessions are obviously always about building a therapeutic relationship and rapport and trust. And then depending on what the person is open to. So again, depends on their age, their presentation. But, you might start with, say, creating an object sculpt or creating something that we call a 6-part story. So, and then from that story, there might be a character. And then we might think, oh, how would that character move? And we might embody that, just to, again, for people to connect with their mind and their bodies. You could role play that. You could dress up as that. Or if they don't feel comfortable with that, you might just keep it in the projective play. So, it might just be, again, objects outside of them. You could then turn that into, a whole big, how does the story end and how would you like it to end? And let's think about this. And so some people do that. They go right from sort of this creating something and then really embodying it. And it does turn into role play. Some people just keep it in collaging or, drawing and or sand tray. And some people actually do talk more than others. But again, they just have creative things to do whilst they're doing it.
Yeah. It's utilizing both sides of their brain.
Yes. And I know it's a really long-winded answer, but honestly, no session looks the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's most people's answer. For like when I ask that question, is that it looks very different every time. But it's great for people, I guess, to get a bit of an idea of what sort of things are involved in a typical sort of session. Where do things like poetry and creative writing, is that sort of part of what you do?
It definitely can be. Back in the UK, I worked in a looked after children service for a couple of years. So working with foster children and their parents, we did sort of tandem therapy with two therapists.
Yeah.
And we, obviously those children have experienced the most awful abuse and neglect. So I used quite a bit of poetry and song lyrics because that was a way to really tap into some of these teenagers who were very angry and very resistant because they were terrified. They didn't want to trust anybody. And a lot of those songs were about dying or hatred or harm, but it was just a way of them being able to tap into their feelings because you could talk about it through the song.
Yeah.
Provide a little bit of distance, and that was a really great way for people to then sort of start to share their own story.
Yeah, I am not surprised. I have no training in drama therapy, but use song lyrics with teenagers all the time because it gives you such an insight into their, how they're feeling, what their thoughts are like without them having to actually verbalize it. It's just a form of expression, right? So,
I like to use a lot of story. Also, probably why part of my name, short stories.
Yes.
But that can be a really great way as well. So I worked in a grief and loss service for the last 3 years, actually, before I opened the practice. And, I used to use like Hindi creation stories and talking about, loss and grief that was so big that the tears threatened to overwhelm the world and, drown the world and take over. And reading those stories to young people and then being able to go, oh gosh, that's a huge feeling. It gave them the words that they didn't have to start to express what they were feeling.
Yeah. Is there, I guess, when I think about, I guess, creative modalities, play sort of based modalities, often we talk about how parents can utilize them, particularly with young children at home. Is there that sort of dynamic, or is it very much trying to keep this for the person themselves?
I think a lot of the time, if it's individual work, it is generally with, if it's a child, the young person on their own.
Yeah.
That said, I think it's really important to keep the parent involved because we see them 1 hour a week and, parents are the expert in their own children. They see them every other hour.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to be feeding back about, themes and things that are working and things that aren't working and have regular reviews. And then obviously help the parent support the young child or the young person whilst they're going through that journey. There is also, I've worked with some families before and I've also done some parent-child work too, which can be really helpful. But I think that a lot of the time it is also important that the young person feels that this is their space. And I think it's quite good for them to be able to explore things on their own and then to also work together and think together about what we're going to feed back to the parents and, give them some ownership over that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I as you sort of said that you've worked with families, I instantly went, oh, I can see how wonderful that would be. I do quite a bit of family therapy and I'm sort of thinking that would be such a unique way for a family to, I guess, even if it's processing trauma or grief or, big changes or things like that within the family dynamic. What a fun way to do stuff. Really. I mean, it just like it's still is dealing with at times some really heavy heavy stuff, but it sounds fun.
It is fun. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that we have this idea that just because the content is serious, that the approach has to be.
Yes,
And
I love that.
you can have a really playful approach and it still be serious. But if someone's experienced trauma and, they don't want to sit there and talk about how traumatic it was.
No,
So
absolutely.
there's nothing wrong with making it fun and playful, because actually you're also showing them how to introduce that back into their lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, by using role play or play, whether that be, actually physically doing that or doing that with objects, you're rehearsing for real life. You're trying on different roles. You're trying on different endings. And it just gives you a way of discovering something that you imagine is possible.
Yeah. I'm sort of, as you're saying things, I'm sort of going, oh, and like trying on new roles and finding I guess new ways of being or more authentic ways of being. I would imagine that as somebody, as like I'm part of the queer community, I would imagine for queer youth that it would be so helpful to be able to just explore without feeling like you need to lock yourself into something.
100%. Yeah. I think for people anyway, especially in the queer community, but I think also just anyone that's trying to figure out their identity, which is
most people. Yeah.
It's a great way of trying on something and seeing if it fits. And actually, as well, if you can do it in a really safe and structured way, you can step into something. And if perchance it doesn't feel right, and actually it might bring up something for you, then your qualified therapist should be able to make sure that you can kind of safely come out of that. And if you try on something or like a role and you do something and you think, oh, that's fabulous, and you think, how do we apply that to your life now? How can you take that feeling and go forth with it?
Yeah. So it's about integrating it as well, not just, trying things out. It's, it's about that integration also.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it intentional.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will do drama or do art or play music and they'll say, oh, it's therapeutic for me or it's cathartic for me. And that's true.
Yeah.
But this is what differentiates between a registered therapist who's done their training, that they can help you intentionally explore and discover this and then think about how you can take it with you.
Yeah, I think I like to make that distinction when I use art in sessions, because I'm not an art therapist, but I will utilize creative sort of things for some of my clients. And I go, this is how we use art as therapy, not art therapy, because it is. And I guess for you, it's the distinction between sort of, drama classes and drama workshops and drama therapy. Which I would imagine there would probably be people who would see the word drama therapy and sort of make that misconception.
All the time. All the time. And I hear a lot of drama classes, drama sessions, like your arts therapy sessions, and they'll say, oh, our psychologist said we should send them to some arts therapy sessions. I find it really difficult and a bit frustrating. Because in the UK, where I trained and worked for 10 years, drama therapy, as well as music, art, and dance and movement, are protected titles. So only someone who does a master's degree at one of the 4 accredited universities can actually call themselves a drama therapist.
Right.
Involves, 100+ hours of client contact, 100 hours of supervision, and 2 years of personal therapy before we actually finish. So when I moved back here, it's not regulated at all.
No, yeah.
There's 3-month online certificates and someone saying, I'm an arts therapist. And
yeah.
I'm like, oh, goodness. It's difficult because I think, and whilst I think all of it can be beneficial, if for example, you're in a session and something comes up through the play that's really significant, like abuse,
Yeah.
You need to have someone that's had the proper training to be able to hold that.
Absolutely. I mean, like, regardless of the modality, we're dealing with humans who have had experiences and some who have had, horrific situations resulting in trauma and shame and guilt and, all of that. And, you want someone, whether they are creative or cognitive, to be able to manage that and hold that space so that that person doesn't walk out still triggered. You want to be able to have that ability to help them self-soothe and things like that. So I firmly agree that those things need to be protected, which is why, I will say that I utilize art as an approach, but I am not an art therapist. So I think it's important that we know what we do and we don't do anything that's outside of that. So do you have a favorite thing that you like to do with clients? Do you have a go-to that you just love doing?
Oh, good question. Looking around my room.
Inspiration.
I have a lot of story cards, which I really love. So they're a really good assessment tool. And then I find that they can also be really great as sort of layering throughout. And I think because visual images are hugely powerful, and I think for people that aren't too sure what to talk about, it's really easy to say something like, just pick 5 to 10 cards that you're drawn to, and the things that come out of that I find can be really quite amazing. I have some cards that have pictures and words, and then you can link the two up. And it's like a window to the soul.
Yeah. It's funny because you ask a kid to tell you a story and they grab it from somewhere. Like there's, you always know that children grab information from somewhere. And even as adults, if somebody asked me to tell them a story, like my creative brain does not turn on that quickly. And so you naturally would draw from experiences or a feeling or something, I would imagine. So I can see how you would learn so much from a very simple activity that they probably don't see a whole lot in, I would think.
Yeah. And there's also a really great exercise called the 6-part story, which was created by an Israeli dramatherapist decades ago.
Yeah.
And again, it's really good it's good for all ages, but great for younger kids because they honestly just draw 6 boxes and then they just draw. And it's like a setting and a character and a problem and a helper and a task and an outcome. So it can be a really great way again of just checking in to see what kind of character they're drawn to, what kind of the problems, who is the helper, is there a helper, sometimes there's not, so again, it's just a great starting off point. I think that I probably try and bring story into everything. If someone's playing, what's their name, what do you think they're doing?
Well, I mean, it's not surprising considering the name of your practice that story is something that you're naturally drawn to. I love, talking to people who do things that are, I guess, considered outside the box. I think that's where we sort of, I think that's where we grow more, quite frankly. But do you ever hit any resistance from people because it is something that is unknown or not talked about too much?
I mean, it's been pretty surprising. So I think probably more in the UK, even though I was actually thinking back to your question from way back at the beginning, but who it might not be helpful for. I would say maybe someone who's very cognitive and literal and does not want to be creative in any way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that there probably was people, say in the UK, that said, I don't want to see a drama therapist. But I've never had a lot of resistance once they actually come in. I would say that in private practice, it's taken off a lot quicker than I expected, considering that I am the only drama therapist on the peninsula.
Yeah.
And one of only a few, really, even the state.
Yeah.
And I have to explain what it is a lot, but a lot of people seem to go, oh, like that's what, almost what I've been looking for, but I didn't know that that's what we needed.
Yeah.
And the only probably resistance that's come up so far has been if children are anxious. And so it's just getting them into the room. I always find that once they're in, they don't want to go. So.
Yeah. Often it's the anticipatory anxiety that is worse than once you're actually there, I find. I mean, I think that's with most things, but I was just sort of thinking about I've had a chat with a few other people who do creative modalities, sort of art therapy, play therapy, a nerd therapist who uses gaming and technology, and which is really great. And so I would imagine that it would be a really great modality to appeal to people's interests, even just like use their strengths, use their interests in a way that can actually benefit them and help them grow and heal. That is, it's not just, a character that they like, or the fact that they like writing poetry, or something like that, that it actually can be really beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because I read an article today about dramatherapy in a sort of Dungeons and Dragons type capacity.
Yeah.
And it was I'm not too sure exactly. It just said therapist, so I'm not entirely sure. But it said she used some of these types of approaches. But it was saying about how role-playing games can really improve, mental health outcomes and moral development and socialization and strategic thinking.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I thought, oh yeah, this is why role-playing.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I was chatting to Mike, he's in WA, and he uses Dungeons and Dragons and role playing and Minecraft, and I mean the creativity to sort of utilize all of this in therapy boggles my brain, to be honest. But I think it is just a really great way to utilize the things that kids and teenagers in particular are probably already doing anyway. So, being able to utilize that in a way that can be therapeutic, surely that's more interesting for them. Surely that's more of a draw card to bring, particularly teenagers, I'm thinking, who may be quite resistant, to actually get them through the door in the room.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I really like about drama therapy specifically is that we draw from all the other arts therapy modalities too. And it's probably the one that does, probably the only one that really does do that. So, we will use art, we will use music, we will use dance and movement. And yeah, I think that really helps. Like, if I have a client that really likes arts and crafts, then I'll do arts and crafts with them.
Yeah.
If I have someone that wants to, create worlds out of objects, then that's what we'll do. If someone wants to do sensory or sand trade, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really good way of kind of just inviting people into the room and seeing what it is that they're drawn to. And then, I will take what they say and I will go and get more stuff and bring it in. I won't
Take
be
it
able
and run with it.
Cushions and a yoga mat and a bunch of scarves and a bunch of toys to create a den with them because I knew they'd love that.
Yeah, I love that. Gosh, it sounds like so much fun.
Except for me trying to wriggle under the table.
Yeah.
I'm 6.
Oh goodness. So, what myth are we smashing? Because I love when we get to the point where we can smash a misconception or a myth about this modality. What is it that people think and they're wrong?
I think we've probably already touched on it a little bit, but I think the main one is that it's like a drama class, and that I get a lot of people saying they're going to a psychologist already, so this would be sort of great, alongside for a bit of creativity.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important to remember, and again, do your due diligence, research your therapists. But if you have someone that has undertaken a master's degree and done all that training and supervision and therapy, then you actually, they have the psychological training. And I guess, like I was saying, it's a playful approach, but that doesn't mean it's not a serial psychological approach, because it absolutely is.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the main one, that I want people to understand that this is just a different approach of therapy, and it's not any less than a psychologist or a psychotherapist.
Yeah. The therapy at the end of Dramatherapy is not just there for looks.
Exactly.
It's actually there because you're an actual therapist,
yes.
not just
somebody. And that goes
somebody.
for all art therapy and music therapy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not that you just love doing creative things with people, there's the underpinnings there as well.
Exactly. And we we love doing creative things. And all drama therapists generally have an undergrad in drama as well. Like we are dramatic people.
Yeah.
But we're also very highly trained mental health professionals. So yeah, I would love that myth to be debunked, so I don't constantly have to say to people, no, I'm not just
yes. Yeah, we don't need the word just there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
I love, I guess, letting people know that there are other things out there other than, I do talk-based therapy, so I can't talk, but it's there are other things out there than just talk-based therapy. And if you are in therapy at the moment, I had a client only the other day who struggles to find language, and we worked out that, hey, actually going to someone who, an arts therapist, I think we decided on, was going to be more suited to them. And so if you are in talk-based therapy and it's not working, there is more out there. You don't have to suffer through session after session after session if it's not working. There is more out there than just sitting on a chair and talking to someone. So I think the more people that know that, the more people that will land into the rooms of creative people like you, to be able to work through stuff that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. So I think it's wonderful.
Talk-based therapies are so important and
absolutely.
in the same way that not all the same. One size doesn't fit. So why should therapy be like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's great to talk to you.
We hope you enjoyed joining us inside the therapy room. Thanks for listening.